Welcome to the Meetup. So today's talk is about the evolution of a scalable web application, or basically the Ubitor story, the application that we've been developing now for over 10 years. It's in active use, and we've got basically at this point we've got over 20 million users. In the beginning there was just one server. We basically were hosting a shared hosting reseller. That's how we started off. We needed to switch providers. So we went from one shared hosting provider to renting a whole server at another shared hosting provider. This time we had the whole server and we were dividing it up however we wanted ourselves. We had more capacity, more stability, and again, things were good. We're still at one server though, so nothing much has changed. So then things broke. We needed help from the provider, and well, they weren't as helpful as we hoped, so we're out shopping for another provider again. That's our story. For a while, we're actually switching providers like every other year. Big migration, all the clients over to a new provider. So our next step was to get our own gear, and we coloed it at a facility that was about 2 hours away from where we lived. We had about 5 servers running the client sites, and there was a bunch of other servers dealing with additional stuff. I didn't have any way to deal with that because that was all it was just a bunch of individual sites sitting on individual servers. So yeah, people got different performance, different times of days. Then it was hardware problems because it was our own hardware, so it was fun driving out there in the middle of the night to fix problems. So we hired a consultant and rented a bunch of servers thousands of kilometers away. We had no physical access to them whatsoever. And basically sort of homebrewed a cloud of sorts before cloud became a buzzword. And but now we have a bunch of big servers, and they've been virtualized into a bunch of smaller servers with MySQL mirror on 2 of them, and load balancers and application servers and all that stuff. So that was stuff we never had to deal with before. Before it was easy. One server, we put all the client files into one folder. Well, I mean, into a bunch of folders, one for each site, but that was on a shared storage server, and then all the application servers just connect to that. So that was kind of our first step. Then we figured it was actually a real pain in the ass to deal with the actual individual sites, because I want to add or remove a site, you have to reconfigure Apache, new site, and all that, right? So we found the Apache's dynamic virtual host stuff, which basically lets you set up a pattern where if you make a folder with the domain name, it'll automatically serve that. So that worked fairly well. We just have a big folder with like a whole bunch of domain names in it, and there are symlinks over to individual folders that go with each site. So that basically made the application servers really hands-off. Any new sites get added, that only needs to be done on the file server and the database server, but application servers don't really care. They just serve whatever needs to be served. And we're starting to run into multiple bottlenecks, because of course you're going to run into bottlenecks if you've got everything going to the same file server. So that was our first bottleneck, the file server, because all the application code was there, and all of the sites actual like media files were there too. So everything will go to the site, like people's pictures and whatnot, and we put all that on Amazon S3. So that took a whole bunch of load off of the file server, because that stuff is no longer served out of there. It's now served directly out of S3. So that helped for a while, at least, long enough to give us time to come up with a plan to move again. And we moved to EC2. Well, it wasn't that easy. So we couldn't use the shared file server trick anymore, because you can't really do that with EC2. We couldn't have persistent storage, at least that was before EBS was added. On a good note, we did already have all the files that made the sites unique up on S3 already. So that, at least that was nice. But we needed to tweak the code so that we don't have to deal with Apache even thinking of separate sites. So the latest incarnation of what we got for the app was born. Basically, every request now goes through the same folder, same entry point in the code. And through a shared, like a central database between all the sites, it maps the request domain name, and it goes, oh, you're that site. Okay, well, you need to be using that database, and that's your S3 prefix. That's where you put all your files, and so basically everything goes through one entry point and all the same shared code, and it just kind of works.